Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2000 Saturn SW2. Up front is a 1.9 liter inline 4, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this SW2 for one big reason: I just love driving Saturns. I also have been working on a Saturn documentary in the background for quite some time, and it's not quite ready yet. However, I do love talking about Saturn, and so we're going to really dive into their history towards the end of the video. But if you'd like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 1.9 liter inline 4 under the hood. Well, there was two engines technically offered here in the S series. They're both 1.9 liters, however, there was the dual cam and the single cam. The 2 in SW2 means it was the dual cam vehicle. If it was the SW1, it would have been the single cam. These were never big power plants. However, as we'll get into later, these actually weren't shared with any other GM product. They were a Saturn only engine, and as I recently learned, they can actually make quite a bit of horsepower if turbocharged, because I drove a smart car with a turbocharged dual cam motor in it, and it made upper 200s of horsepower. So these are stout little engines. They're pretty reliable, and I really enjoy them. Like I said, paired to it is a 4-speed automatic transmission. I don't overly love this. I've driven Saturns with manuals, and they are a lot more fun and have a really engaging throw into gear. So this automatic isn't really doing it for me, but again, simplicity, and that was kind of the name of the game with the SW2. Last but not least, the SW2 is of course front wheel drive. So how does it feel to drive the SW2? Well, it does have a very economy feeling, but also a very charming and endearing feeling. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they put in the mixture at the Saturn plant down in Tennessee, but there's just something low power but joyous about these vehicles. It's not bothered by world politics and accounting. Especially these dual cams are pretty fun for what they are. Now, ride quality isn't great, visibility is decent, and the steering is a little bit heavier than what I would want. However, again, this is an economy car. It was meant to fulfill a purpose, and I think it fulfilled that economy purpose very well. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is my fuel. In the center is the speedometer and tachometer, and off to the right is the coolant temperature. On the steering wheel, we don't have anything. We have the horn and airbag, but that's about it. Off to the left, we do have a climate vent as well as our gauge dimmer switch. And moving on to the door, we have the latch to get in and out and manual crank for our windows. So because it is the SW2, didn't necessarily mean it got every option, even though it was the nicer engine. So you could still get manual windows here in the SW2. Moving into the center, we have 2 climate vents. We have our standard Saturn radio with theft deterrent. This basically means when the radio loses power, you need a code to turn it back on. That was their theft deterrent ways of the 1990s. And then we have our climate controls. Temperature off to the left, fan speed in the center, where to send it off to the right, and this does have factory AC. Then we do have a 12-volt outlet and a cup holder, so we'll do a big friggin' bottle test, and it fails up front here. However, around the back, there's a bigger cup holder, and it actually does pass. So the 2000 SW2 passes the big friggin' bottle test. A little cubby and that passing cup holder. Then we do get a center console and the seats. The seats are cloth. They're nothing really too crazy to write home about. However, they are comfortable and they have that really warm and inviting 90s feel. I know this is a 2000, but really this is a 90s designed vehicle. And so I really enjoy the seat material. I like the way they feel. And this is when economy cars didn't necessarily punish you for buying an economy car. The seats are comfortable and not hard like what you would find in a modern day Versa or base model Toyota Corolla. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2000 Saturn SW2, and a couple of things to note. First of all, I fit back here relatively well. Headroom's decent, that is helped out by the wagonness of it, which I love, but also knee space is pretty good, and I moved my seat back from the driver's original position. So you're gonna have decent space, and that's not always an easily findable, that's not the word. That's not easily found, there it is, in modern economy cars. Normally the back seats are so squished, so jammed. GM always had somewhat of an emphasis on decent back seats for their economy cars. Even my base model Pontiac G6 I grew up with had a good back seat. The Chevy Aveo surprisingly has a passable back seat. And so here in GM's little side hustle side project from the late 80s, early 90s, still had decent rear seat space. So that is lovely to see. Now this is a wagon, so we do have wagonness around the back. This is obviously the most cargo space that you could find in a Saturn product at the time. These were also used as mail carriers, and I have a review of that on my channel. They're right-hand drive, some small changes here and there. But with the wagons, you could tell why. There's plenty of space back here, and I absolutely love seeing that. If I were to ever buy a Saturn, and I hope to one day eventually, I do think it will be the wagon variant. But until then, here's Nathan's. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and again, I've always found the SW or S series in general rather endearing. They are cute little cars. They look like they have a little bit of personality, and I really like seeing that. What's interesting about the wagons is that they actually use the same rear doors as the sedans. So that's why you see this like weird kind of curved design in the side of the car, which I think is kind of interesting. But overall, I love the wagon look. I love that they even made wagons. I miss the 90s where you could buy the same car in a coupe, sedan, or wagon. Unfortunately, this era of Saturn didn't have a convertible that wouldn't come until the Saturn Sky. That was a convertibles, but Saturn never really had convertibles, so unfortunately that wasn't an option as much as I would have loved to have seen an SC convertible. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a Saturn SW2 yet again? I've driven a bunch of S series at this point, and I'll always come back to them. I always love them, and this is a great experience. Like I said, it is basic and economy. It's affordable, but it didn't punish you. It's still relatively fun to drive. It still had decent enough seats. It had AC. It had everything you needed and nothing that you didn't. But let's talk about Saturn as a whole, because the S series was the first series to come from the brand. Well, we have to go all the way back to the late 1970s. In the 1970s, there were two oil crises. And what ended up happening was that there was a crackdown on emissions and a focus on more affordable, more economical, and more efficient vehicles. So there was a lot of shift going on throughout the 1980s. Ford heavily invested into Mazda, and we got vehicles like the Ford Festiva that was really a Mazda 121 and a Kia Pride. GM started working with Toyota again, and they developed not only the Geo brand, but crossover vehicles like the Corolla that was also the Chevy Nova, Chevy Spectrum, vehicles like that. Chrysler had the K platform, and they spread it across all of their brands. We have Lee Iacocca to thank for that. And we had new brands come in. We saw Hyundai for the first time in the 1980s with their economy Hyundai Excel. We saw Mitsubishi start to gain some traction. We had the Yugo advertised for under $4,000 brand new. So GM wanted to ride this wave of economical, affordable cars, but they wanted to do it in a new way. So in 1985, they created Saturn. Now, they wouldn't produce a car until the 1990s, but in the late 80s, they built an entirely new plant down in Tennessee just for Saturn. They developed a completely new engine. Again, that 1.9 liter was not shared in any other GM product. And they decided to not share any of the GM dealers. So right off the bat, it wasn't a Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Saturn, Chevy, whatever. They started to build their own brick and mortar dealerships, and they started going after a whole new demographic. They hired college students to sell the cars to other college students. They completely broke the mold. They were one of the first truly brand new companies to come out for a long, long time and to really switch up the entire process of selling cars. And they produced this, the SC and the SL, and they were lovely, lovely cars. Absolutely fantastic. They had plastic body panels, so they were dent resistant and wouldn't rust. They had fun little engines. They were sold for affordable prices. And again, as I mentioned with this car, they just They had joy to them. However, all of this came at a very, very big price tag. It wasn't cheap to build a brand new factory down in Tennessee. It wasn't cheap to build a bunch of new dealerships. It wasn't cheap to design an entirely new engine from the ground up. And so the bills started to pile up, and although the S-Series was very, very successful, it wasn't successful enough. And so into the 2000s, Saturn continued, but GM started to rebadge some of their overseas products as Saturns. The Opel vehicles came here as Saturns to carry the brand on and to get their head above water, but by the late 2000s, they were just poorly rebadged cars. I mean, basically a sticker change from the GMC Acadia made the Saturn outlook. And so this car, this SW2, really was the heyday of Saturn, where things were at least looking good. Maybe the bills weren't getting fully paid, but at least there were high spirits, and you could tell driving cars like this, and you could tell talking to owners. I've never met a Saturn owner that wasn't head over heels for their car. I drive Hondas all the time from people that are like, yeah, you know, reliable, safe bet. Well, I drive Toyotas a lot, same deal. You know, it's, you know, they're Toyotas, they're, you know, cheap, whatever. But Saturn people love their cars. And so there's something to that. These cars were very special. And I think it goes back to that saying of, if you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. And that's what this car did. They shot for the moon with Saturn. I guess I should have said they shot for Saturn. And although Saturn ended up collapsing in 2009 when GM went bankrupt, they still landed among the stars. And this star still shines bright, even here today. That's the most incredible thing. The Saturn community is still vibrant. It's still alive. I've met so many wonderful people through Saturns. And so now I'm excited to add Nathan to that group of wonderful people that I've met through these cars. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Nathan for letting me borrow his SW2 for today's video. He's been absolutely wonderful to work with. I appreciate him messaging me and letting me take out another Saturn here today. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.